It began with a phone call I hadn't expected, not because it came out of nowhere, but because I'd trained myself to expect nothing at all. "Hey Mom, it's Alina. Do you have a minute?" Her voice, thin and tired, felt like the ghost of someone I used to know. Still mine in theory, but somehow already half belonging to the world outside of me. "Of course," I said, setting down the mug I'd been holding with both hands. "Are you okay?" She hesitated. That was my answer. "The apartment lease is up," she finally said, "and my roommate bailed last minute. I'm just in a bit of a bind." A bind? It was the kind of word you use when you're asking for help but don't want to sound like you're asking. A soft word, a half apology tucked inside a sentence. "You can stay here," I said without thinking. "It's just me and the dog. Plenty of room." "I don't want to impose, you're not," I interrupted. "You're my daughter." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Okay, just for a couple of weeks. Until I figure things out." I smiled to myself, already standing to make the guest room feel like a home again. "Come whenever you're ready," I said. "I'll leave the porch light on." She arrived the next day with a suitcase that looked too small for someone planning to live temporarily. A suitcase and 3 large boxes, and a friend who helped carry things in, but didn't stay for coffee. Alina hugged me at the door loosely, like we hadn't hugged properly in years. Maybe we hadn't. Her scent had changed. She used to smell like rosemary and clean soap. Now it was vanilla musk and dry shampoo and something faintly metallic underneath, like city air. "I cleared the top drawer for you," I told her as she rolled her suitcase down the hallway. "Thanks." The guest room hadn't changed much in the years since she'd moved out, except for the quilt I'd added to the bed. A deep blue one with pale yellow thread running through it like a quiet storm. She paused when she saw it. "You still have that?" "It's yours," I said. "I stitched it when you were in high school. Remember?" She ran a hand across the fabric. "Barely." I smiled. "It remembers you." The first few days were gentle. We settled into a rhythm I hadn't dared to hope for. Coffee in the mornings, hers iced, mine hot. She left for job interviews with a backpack slung over one shoulder, came back late with sighs and vague updates. I think they liked me. Maybe I'm overqualified. Or sometimes nothing at all. I didn't press. I just made dinner. The third night, she asked if she could invite someone over. Just for dinner. Nothing big. Of course, I said. He was polite, clean-shaven, with too much cologne and a nervous smile. Called me ma'am and complimented the lasagna twice. "He's just a friend," she said afterward, catching my expression. I didn't say anything. "You didn't have to," she muttered. That night, I lay awake and wondered if I'd already overstepped. If being a mother meant knowing when to speak and when to simply stay quiet. 2 weeks turned into a month, then 6. By the time the first frost arrived, Alina had a new set of house slippers she kept by the front door, her own shelf in the fridge, and a second key on her own ring. Her boxes were unpacked. Her resume had stopped being updated, and the dog, my aging retriever, Toby, had begun sleeping in her room more than mine. I didn't mind. Not at first. It was good to see her again, even like this. Even if I had to bite my tongue when she rolled her eyes. Even if she treated the house like a hotel lobby, disappearing and returning on her own clock. She was here, and that counted for something. It was a small thing that changed everything. A picture frame. I'd had it on the mantle since the year she turned 7, a photo of the 2 of us at the beach, both sunburned, both grinning, both holding melting ice cream cones like trophies. One day, it was gone. I noticed the empty space right away, a pale rectangle where the sun hadn't reached the wood. "Did you move the beach photo?" I asked casually that evening while setting the table. Alina glanced up from her phone. "What photo?" "The one from Cape May. You were little." She shrugged. "Oh, yeah. I put it in a drawer." "Didn't go with the rest of the room." I paused. "It was my living room." She didn't reply. Things began unraveling after that, slowly, subtly, like loose threads I didn't notice until the whole hem was gone. She began redecorating. It started with throw pillows, then new curtains, then a rug I didn't recognize arrived one afternoon, and my old one was rolled up and propped against the porch wall like a piece of trash waiting for collection. "Where's the blue rug?" I asked. "It was musty," she said, "and it snagged my heels." She said it like a fact, not a request, and I let it go. Because arguing over a rug felt small, because I told myself she was still adjusting, because I loved her, because that's what mothers do. The second shift came with mail. One morning, I found a glossy envelope addressed to Miss Alina Dorsey at our address. Not unusual, except the return label was for a luxury furniture company I'd never ordered from. I asked her about it that night. Oh, they send samples. For what? She hesitated. I've been doing some consulting. Interior design. I blinked. Since when? A few months. You didn't mention it. I didn't think I had to. It wasn't a fight, but it wasn't nothing either. I made tea. She poured wine. We sat in different rooms that night. By spring, she'd taken over most of the second floor. Boxes lined the hallway. Some marked client props, others unmarked. She turned the guest room into a workspace. The old sewing machine I kept there covered in swatches and glossy brochures. I knocked before entering now. One day, while organizing my own closet, I noticed 2 pairs of my shoes missing. Not expensive ones, just familiar. I found them later in a donation bag by the garage. They didn't fit your style anymore, she said when I asked. She didn't ask. She just decided. The final straw wasn't dramatic, not like in books or movies. It was a Sunday evening, soft rain ticking against the windows. She had friends over, 3 of them, all in their late 20s, laughing loudly and sipping wine I hadn't bought. I brought out a plate of cookies. No one looked up. No one said thank you. As I stood in the kitchen doorway, I heard Alina laugh. Yeah, it's basically my place now. Mom's just kind of here. The words weren't cruel, just thoughtless, but they landed like stones in my chest. I walked back to my room and closed the door. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the wall, and for the first time in a long while, I asked myself a question I hadn't dared to voice. What did I give up in the name of love? And when would I decide to take it back? The next morning, I folded the dish towel that had wrapped the untouched cookies. I didn't confront her. Not yet. There was nothing to gain from a performance. I'd raised Alina. I knew how she reacted to confrontation. With deflection, sarcasm, silence. And honestly, I wasn't even angry. Not yet. Mostly, I felt hollow. Like a photograph that had faded in the sun. I didn't want to feel that way in my own home. So I did what I always do when I feel lost. I cleaned. I pulled out every drawer, dusted every shelf. Not just for tidiness, for clarity. I needed to remember what was mine. I needed to feel the corners of my life again. In the attic, beneath an old cedar chest, I found a cardboard box I hadn't opened in years. Inside, my wedding album, my mother's locket, Alina's hospital bracelet from the day she was born. I sat on the floor with it, knees aching, fingers trembling. Somewhere between the pages of that album and the faint scent of cedar, I found myself again, and I decided I wasn't going to be erased. Alina didn't notice, or maybe she did and chose not to mention it. She began spending more time on her laptop, on the phone, rearranging parts of the house like a set designer on a stage she never invited me to perform on. Once, I came home from the pharmacy to find her painting the front hallway. Without asking, the color was cold, icy gray. Do you like it? She asked. I said nothing. She waved the brush in the air like a wand. It's modern, clean. Clients love this tone. Feels more high-end. I walked past her, into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water. She didn't follow. That evening, I pulled out my file cabinet. Buried behind bank statements and tax folders was the deed to the house, yellowed slightly, but intact. My name in full, signed, notarized, stamped. I'd inherited it from my mother who had raised me in that very kitchen, who taught me how to sew in the front room, who sat on the porch every Sunday with her knitting and a glass of lemonade. This house wasn't just walls, it was legacy. I made a copy of the deed and placed it in a fresh manila envelope. Then I made an appointment with a lawyer. Her name was Marla Chen, sharp, composed, the kind of woman who didn't waste words. You want to protect the property, she said after skimming the papers. Yes, from whom? My daughter. Marla didn't flinch. She simply nodded. Let's create a trust. In the weeks that followed, things worsened. Alina began inviting more people over. Always colleagues, always just for brainstorming sessions. But they treated my home like a rental studio. Moved furniture, took photos, rearranged shelves for aesthetic. One of them picked up a porcelain figurine from the mantel one my grandmother had given me and asked, "Is this real vintage or just for look?" Alina answered before I could, "Just decoration. I might donate it." I said nothing at the time, but that night, I packed the figurine into a box labeled "Keep," upstairs closet. and I locked the closet door. The next turning point came on a Thursday afternoon. I'd gone out for groceries, just a few things. When I returned, I heard laughter from the living room. Alina was giving a tour. This is the space I've been working out of. Great light, amazing bones. I'm thinking of listing it soon. Listing it, she said. It so casually, like it was hers. One of the women, someone in a smart linen suit, nodded and took notes. I stepped into the room. Alina, a word please. Her smile faltered. We're just brainstorming ideas. In my home? She glanced at the other women, then back at me. In our home, she corrected, voice tight. The women excused themselves. Quickly, the air shifted, heavy and cold. You're planning to sell? I asked once we were alone. It's an idea. No, why not? I almost laughed. Because it's not yours to sell. She blinked. I live here. I work here. You are my guest. I've been here almost a year. Exactly. She folded her arms, chin high. You act like I'm a stranger. No, I said softly. I act like someone who has watched her daughter become one. That night, I heard her. On the phone, pacing, whispering. They're just being difficult. No, I don't think she'll actually do anything. Well, I don't know. I thought it'd be simpler. Something shifted in me. Not anger. Resolve. 2 days later, I returned from a walk to find a photographer in my front yard, snapping pictures of the exterior. He waved. You mind stepping out of the frame? I didn't answer. I walked inside and closed the door behind me. Alina was in the kitchen, arranging flowers. What is this? Preliminary staging. For what? The listing. No, she looked up. You said that already. I meant it. She straightened her back. I've been talking to agents. The market's hot. It makes sense. You could move somewhere smaller. I don't want smaller. But you could. I don't want different. I want home. She scoffed. You're being irrational. I opened the drawer, pulled out the envelope with the deed copy, and placed it on the table between us. Read it. Her eyes scanned the words. Her face changed. What is this? Proof. You're putting it in a trust? I already have. She laughed. So now you don't trust me? I stared at her. Would you? That night, she left. Not permanently, but long enough to go quiet for a few days. When she returned, she didn't say a word about the trust, but something in her had hardened. She stopped saying good morning. She made coffee only for herself. She began locking the guest room door when she left. One evening, she walked past me without looking up and said, I'm moving out. End of next month. I didn't respond, because I knew it wasn't the end. Then came the emails from strangers. One said they were delighted to move forward with the staging. Another referenced renovation budgets, each one sent to a shared inbox I'd never created. She was still trying to sell, even without my consent, even after everything. Marla helped me file a cease and desist. We posted a legal notice on the door, and still, Alina acted as if she lived in a world where consequences were optional. I don't know what you think you're protecting. She snapped one morning. It's just a house. No, I said quietly. It's my boundary. It came to a head 2 weeks later. I returned from visiting a friend to find movers in the driveway. Alina stood on the porch, clipboard in hand. What is this? Staging furniture, she said coolly. It's temporary. No, you can't stop this. I can. I am. She took a step forward. You are embarrassing yourself. No, I said, pulling out my phone. But you're about to. I called Officer Daniels, the kind man who lived 4 doors down and had offered his number months ago. Within 15 minutes, a patrol car rolled in. Alina's jaw tightened. She's not letting me conduct business. She's the legal owner, Officer Daniels replied, glancing at the trust documents I handed him. Alina turned red. You're siding with her? No, he said gently. I'm siding with the law. That night, she packed in silence. No tears, no apologies, just cardboard and tape. She left before sunrise. I watched from the window, heart cracked but intact. The house exhaled. I did too. They said this house wasn't mine anymore, so I let the law whisper what I didn't have to scream. The silence that spoke louder than any goodbye. The house had grown still again. The storm had passed outside. And for the first time in months, maybe even years, I could breathe in its silence and not feel the weight of accusation wrapped around it. Callum and Sydney were gone. Not just from the house, but from the chapter of my life they had tried to steal. The lawyer, Marcus, had done more than just confirm my rights. He'd unearthed something deeper. A clause in the deed that neither Callum nor I had remembered. A condition my late husband had quietly added after one of our last fights about protecting Eloise's peace. In the event our marital home is ever contested, its full title will revert solely to my wife, Eloise Whitmore Bennett, unless otherwise agreed in writing. There was no such agreement. Sydney's claims about modern entitlement had shattered like glass against the authority of ink and law. She'd stormed out during the last meeting with Marcus, muttering something about corrupt systems and old money games. I didn't follow her. Callum had stayed seated after she left, but not really present. Just staring at the hardwood floors, the same ones he used to race his toy trucks across. He didn't speak, neither did I eventually. He stood and left quietly, like he was stepping out of a church, unsure of whether to feel ashamed or forgiven. I didn't chase him. Weeks passed. I repainted the kitchen cabinets. I donated half of the living room furniture and bought a new reading chair, a plush forest green one that hugged my tired frame. The house didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt lighter, like it had been holding its breath all along, waiting for me to exhale. I got a call from Sydney's father. Polite, cautious. He apologized not for her but for what the whole family had tried to do. He'd heard the full story. Eloise, he said, my daughter made a mess, and my grandson doesn't need to grow up believing that cruelty is a currency. I thanked him for the call. That was all. 3 months later, I received an invitation, a pale blue envelope with gold embossed edges. Inside, you are invited to the naming ceremony of Beckett, James Whitmore, their child, my grandson. I stared at the invite for a long time, not because I didn't know what to do, but because I did. I tucked it away in the same drawer that once held every birthday card Callum had made me in crayon. I did not attend, not out of vengeance, not out of bitterness, but because some doors need to remain closed, not locked but gently, firmly closed, because healing isn't always about returning. Sometimes it's about staying still when everyone expects you to chase. One autumn afternoon, I hosted a neighborhood tea again just like I used to. Marjorie from across the street brought her famous walnut pie. Danielle from next door brought her niece, who was visiting from Boston. We laughed. I told stories. The house echoed with the kind of sound it had missed, unforced soft joy. After everyone left, I sat by the front window. A car drove by slowly. Familiar. It paused. Inside was Callum. He didn't get out. He didn't wave, but his eyes met mine, just for a moment, long enough for a flicker of something, remorse maybe. Then he drove on, and I turned back to my tea. Steam curling upward like smoke from an old fire finally gone out. I didn't need apologies anymore. I didn't need restitution, because in the quiet of this home, in the creak of floors and the hum of old radiators, I'd reclaimed everything they tried to erase without raising my voice, without slamming a single door. I'd let the law whisper what I didn't have to scream, and that was the most peaceful justice I could have ever asked for.